So Larry Lage of the Associated Press reported yesterday, according to the AP, that a former employee at a Big Ten football program said Monday that his job was to steal signs, and he was given details from multiple conference schools before his team played Michigan to compile a spreadsheet of play calling signals used by the Wolverines last year, i.e., basically other teams in the conference were like, all right, so then we're going to go ahead and get their signs and use those as well too. Which points to something that Brady pointed out on this show a couple of weeks ago, which got a lot of pushback when you said this goes on in a lot of places. And here's a guy saying, I gave this evidence over to Jim Harbaugh and to Michigan because I didn't feel like it was fair that they're being criticized and singled out when you had a rogue assistant coach going out and doing these things that have been done to Michigan over the past year plus, and here's your evidence. So now another layer to this whole thing.
I want to be very clear with everything I'm about to say next, okay? And I'm hoping our friends at Fox Sports Radio on social media can actually clip this off and include it, okay? Just because I have said that it goes on in other places, that doesn't mean that I condone it. I'm just telling you what I know. It's no different. And LaVar, I'll ask you this. Do schools pay players outside of NIL when they recruit?
Do the schools pay them?
Do schools or alums, et cetera? I mean, you know where it's coming from.
Yes.
Okay. That has gone on forever. Is it illegal? Yes. Do teams always get caught? Very rarely. All right? There are elaborate schemes and ways in which they do it. I won't go into depth, but also illegal. Do we make a big deal about it? No. Because now we hide behind, well, it's NIL. Well, even NIL is not being done in the proper manner in some ways. But the NCAA doesn't have the teeth to be able to punish them for that. This is a little bit different. And the NCAA investigation for this, I'm sure, will, if they have the actual evidence of Connor Stallions at opposing teams filming those signals, filming sidelines, that they'll be punished for it if they have evidence of it. Because you're not supposed to do that based on a rule that was created back in 1994. But I want to be very clear. Just because I'm telling you that out there are schools who are going to pay players to get them as recruits. I don't think it's a news flash to anyone. I'm not condoning it, but I'm telling you it happens. It goes on. Elaborate schemes. Okay? It's no different with the sign stealing. And I've had people who are coaching, I've never heard. Okay, you haven't heard of this? Okay? This goes on at other schools. And maybe not in the same manner in which Michigan has done this. But I know of coaches who were responsible for sign stealing and doing this. There's the quote-unquote analysts who aren't even on your school's campuses, who are all throughout the country that are able to go to other games and see this and try to steal signs. So, look, I'm not trying to defend Michigan in any way. But I also am trying to provide the perspective that it goes on everywhere else, too. There's a lot of other ways in which people do it. And coaches who act like, oh, I know coaches who try to say it doesn't go on. That I'm like, I know the guy who's doing it for you all. So don't say it doesn't go on, because I know the coach who was doing it. So my whole point is that I don't think it plays as big of an impact in a game. Because, one, let's just look at it this way. As we talked about last year when teams knew this was going on, TCU, for example, some of the schools that have been open about it say, well, we changed everything. We changed our signals, changed our calls, all that. Okay. So then really what benefit of having old signs and things like that, how does that benefit you? Even if in an attempt at cheating, if they've changed everything and they get an end game, they've got a guy who's trying to steal signs, which, by the way, if you're on the sidelines in game trying to steal signs, that's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. And if the team changed everything, they maybe figure out by the third, fourth quarter, okay, that's part of the gamesmanship that goes on. And that's allowed within the rules. But my point is, like, taking them from what they were, the signals, being able to confirm in-game if those actually are the signals, and then being able to, throughout the course of the game while teams are making adjustments, work it all out so you're making calls that are effective to execute against that. It's hard to know exactly how big of an impact it has. What has a much bigger impact, and what's happening right now in college football, and in my opinion is a bigger issue than this, is tampering. There are schools and bigger schools or other schools that are competing that are big schools with one another who are tampering with kids on rosters. If I can grab a 5-star kid or another school's star and offer him whatever amount of money, which is 100% inducement, is illegal within the rules, and I get that kid on my team, that is way more of an advantage than sign stealing. Yet we're making a big deal about the Michigan sign stealing, and because of the Connor Stallions character and the success of Michigan and probably how Jim Harbaugh has handled things and how he is with the media anyway, and it's a big brand, when the reality is that's not one of the biggest issues that college football faces. Tampering is a much more widespread issue as well that I think plays a much greater impact on teams and their ability to compete, where you have coaches on the field after games who are offering kids money. And I've heard firsthand from kids. So that to me is a much greater issue that I guess the NCAA doesn't want to investigate or doesn't want to look through. And it's just a bit surprising to me. Look, I'm not condoning any illegal activity that takes place in any of these schools. But when you're looking at what plays the biggest factors or issues with where the college football game is right now, I don't think sign stealing is at the top of the list. And as I've said when this first came out, there is 2 simple solutions to this, okay? Go to the coach, the quarterback, where you just call the play in the quarterback's helmet, or bring back the huddle. A lot of teams will huddle up, and it takes away any ability whatsoever for that team to get down their signals. If you put on a wristband, you can signal in the plays that way, and people are like, well, what about them stealing the signals for the wristband? Well, first off, when you got 300 plays, 200 plays, it's really hard to be able to steal that then, because you're probably only running a play maybe once, maybe twice, okay? That's hard to be able to do. And when you've got people running in and out of huddles, with the play, there's no way of them stealing any of that. So those are the 2 quick ways of completely eliminating any advantage a sign stealing would have in the game. And yet we don't see teams adapting to that. I wonder why. I wonder why that is. There are some teams that have taken advantage of the sign stealing, and they feel like they don't want it to necessarily go away because maybe it's played a huge advantage for them.
So if this report from Larry Lage is true, and he sent over screenshots of other staffers at other Big Ten schools who were corresponding about stealing Michigan signs. If I'm Tony Petitti and I've got all this stuff and I've got these Big Ten coaches demanding that Michigan be punished immediately, I'd say, so apparently this was going on. A bunch of people are involved, so here's what we're going to do. Everybody cut the crap. We're starting clean. No more of this garbage, and let's just continue with the season. Because there's no way you can just punish Michigan when you've got every other school who was doing the same thing to them. It just feels like you're going down this slippery slope where you're singling out Michigan and not accounting for everybody else involved.
I just think
that's the point, though. You got to just forget real quick. You just have to assume that you'll know exactly why all these things took place after Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan. Like, think about how many accusations, how many rule breaks, how many of these things that are being discussed will be discussed once Harbaugh is not at Michigan. Like, we'll know. That's when we'll know for certain that there was an agenda. It was pointed directly at the coach of Michigan. And until he's not there coaching, you're going to continue to have all of these mysterious allegations and rule breakings and all these different things. You bought a cheeseburger and you supersized it instead of just getting them a regular size, and you bought it for the sister and the brother and the uncle and the aunt, and now you're in trouble. I think we'll know exactly why all of these things and all the speculation were the way that they were when Harbaugh isn't there anymore. And because you're not going to hear all of these things about Michigan once he's gone. But while he's there, they're going to look for any and every little thing that they can use to agitate and facilitate and instigate movement with Harbaugh. That's what I think it is. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if it's the school, which I don't think at this point it would be the school, because why would you want to cut your nose to spite your face? I don't know that it's necessarily the school, but it is coming from somewhere, because it's easy to see that tampering and cheating. I mean, did you guys see the clip of Coach Saban after the game this past weekend, where he gave the player a hug on the field and he said, "Man, you'd play a lot more if you were with us." Like that, they caught that on film.
A little flirting.
They caught that on film. Like, you're telling a player, like, I think it was the LSU player. Did they just play LSU?
Yeah.
Okay. I think he says it right on the field. Like, you play more with us. Like, got it on film. Where's all the outrage? That's tampering. You're recruiting. So I think people pick and choose when they want to make stories bigger stories. And there's always a reason why you want to make that a bigger story. And it's clearly that it's the coach that is the biggest focal point of what's going on. And they're not going to stop until they receive his resignation or the school is forced to take action against him. That's what I think it is.
It's a good point. And I was just going to say on the Petitti front, again, precedent is a word that you hear often in contract negotiations and labor negotiations and really, in most cases, just the business world. And this is one where when you take over as a conference commissioner, you got to be careful about what you put on your plate as far as what you're responsible for. Maybe Tony Petitti wants this. Maybe he wants to appear to have the type of control where he can punish coaches in schools and teams for this. Maybe he wants to build out a robust investigative arm of the Big Ten in order to look into these sorts of matters and not have it be an NCAA investigation. But I tend to look at it and think, be careful what you wish for, because there's going to be always unintended consequences when you open up, I'll just call it Pandora's box, in the sense of, all right, you take on this one issue, then that kind of opens up speculation to, well, where does it stop? Like, if you have all this power to punish Michigan for, whatever, the sign stealing and what they were doing wrong, where does it stop? Like, where does your ability to punish a school, a coach, a player stop? And how does it work in conjunction with the NCAA, or does it? Whereas if there's differing opinions, I mean, the whole thing, I think, becomes, candidly, just a mess, because we haven't seen this before. And that's why I've been an advocate for saying, look, let the NCAA run its course until we get to a point where the Group of Five, Power Five looks different, and the college football playoff expands, and there's maybe a different entity that is overseeing all of this, separate from the NCAA. Then I think we can have a conversation about what the power of that person looks like and what they're responsible for.